The distress call, the sky over Varela burned red. Ash drifted through the air like falling snow. From the highest tower of the capital, the leaders watched their city die. The enemy had come without warning, their ships breaking through orbital defenses as if they were made of paper. Now great walls of black smoke rose from the streets, and the sound of distant explosions rolled like thunder inside the central command hall. Panic gripped the officers. The great shield domes were failing, one after another, every transmission to nearby star systems had gone unanswered. The Galactic Alliance, the Varelans' proud protectors, was silent. One young officer's voice broke the tense quiet. "Counselor, we have sent the distress call to every registered fleet in the sector," he said, "but no one has responded." The counselor's scaled hands tightened into fists. "They swore to defend us," she said in a low, bitter voice. Her words were swallowed by another explosion outside. Somewhere beyond the hills, a massive energy blast flattened an entire residential block. The command hall trembled, dust falling from the high ceiling. In the corner of the room, the communications officer stared at his console. Something strange was happening. A faint signal had just appeared, small, almost lost in the static. It wasn't from the core worlds. It wasn't even from the Alliance's central fleet. It came from far beyond the safe zones. From a system no Varelan dared to contact. The officer's pupils widened. "Counselor, we have an answer," he said, voice shaking. "It's from Earth." The name spread through the hall like lightning. Some gasped, others whispered. In fear, Earth was a death world, a place so hostile its native species had evolved into apex predators. Humans were not like other races in the Alliance. They were a people forged by danger, war, and survival. The galaxy told stories of them, how they fought, how they never surrendered, and how their enemies disappeared. But these were only stories. No Varelan had ever seen one. The counselor's throat tightened. "Put them through," she ordered. Static filled the speakers, followed by a low, steady voice. "This is Admiral Reyes of the Terran Defense Fleet," it said. "We received your call." The words were calm, but there was an edge of steel in them. "Send us your enemy's coordinates." The voice continued, "and prepare your skies for war." The hall fell silent. The humans hadn't asked for politics, payment, or permission from the Alliance. They hadn't even asked who the enemy was. They simply promised war. From the upper balcony, a young Varelan guard leaned toward his commander. "Do we trust them?" he whispered. The commander's eyes never left the screen. "We have no choice," she replied. "Better a predator on our side than no one at all." Far above the burning city, the stars began to shift. Sensors picked up incoming warp signatures. At first, they thought it was a small fleet, 10 ships, maybe 20. But the readings kept climbing. 50 ships. 100. More. Their engines burned white-hot, their massive silhouettes blotting out the constellations. The first Terran warship dropped out of hyperspace, a black giant, its hull scarred from 100 battles. No music, no bright colors, no banners, just steel guns. And the quiet hum of power. The Varelans had expected ceremony, maybe a declaration of unity like the Alliance always gave. But the Terran fleet spoke only in action. Each ship moved into perfect formation, weapons charged, targeting systems locking on. The biggest vessel, marked Iron Resolve, took position above the capital. Its cannons were so large the Varelans could see them from the ground. The crackled again. "Varela Command. This is Admiral Reyes," the voice said. "We are engaging." No long speech. No warning, just 3 words that felt like a promise. The officers rushed to their stations, watching as the Deathworlder ships roared forward. In orbit, the enemy fleet had already begun moving toward them. They outnumbered the humans 3-1. The Varelans braced for a bloody fight. But they were not ready for what happened next. The Terrans didn't move like normal fleets. They accelerated with terrifying precision, weaving between enemy fire as if they'd trained for this exact battle. The first salvo from the Iron Resolve vaporized 2 enemy cruisers in seconds. The shockwave lit up the black sky. Varellan soldiers on the ground paused mid-fight, staring upward as streaks of white fire cut through the heavens. In the command hall, the counselor whispered under her breath, "They came, and they are not here to lose." And somewhere, deep in the enemy flagship, a commander stared at his tactical screen and felt his confidence shatter. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were coming for him. The first sight, the people of Varela had seen fleets before. The Galactic Alliance's ships were always beautiful, sleek silver hulls, shining like jewels in the sunlight. They came with banners, music, and long speeches about unity and peace. But when the Deathworlders fleet arrived, it was nothing like that. The first thing the Varellans noticed was the silence. No welcoming message. No parade of lights, just warships sliding into orbit with the slow, unstoppable weight of predators. Their hulls were black and scarred, each one carrying the marks of past battles. Some ships had whole sections replaced with mismatched metal. Proof they had fought, survived, and gone back to fight again. They were not built to impress. They were built to kill. The largest ship, the Iron Resolve, loomed above the capital like a mountain in the sky. Its armored plating looked thick enough to shrug off an asteroid strike. Along its flanks, massive cannons rotated into position, each one glowing faintly as power surged through them. Smaller escort ships swarmed around it, moving in perfect formation without a single wasted motion, even from the ground. The Varellans could feel the fleet's presence, an invisible weight pressing down on the city. Inside the capital's military sky docks, hundreds of Varellans gathered to watch the new arrivals. Some stood in awe, others in fear. No one spoke too loudly. It felt like being in the presence of something dangerous that might notice you at any moment. Rumors spread quickly. "Those ships, they're made from Deathworld metals," one engineer whispered. "I heard the humans forged their armor under pressure, so high it would crush most species." Another said, "No one knew if the stories were true, but every word made the humans seem even more alien." The comm systems came alive. A single voice spoke, a deep, steady tone. "This is Admiral Reyes," it said. "We are reading your enemy's positions. Lock your planetary defenses on their ground troops. We'll take the skies." The Varellan commanders exchanged looks. The humans didn't ask for permission. They gave orders, like the battle was already theirs, high above. The enemy fleet began to move. Their ships turned toward the human formation, weapons glowing with charged plasma. From the ground, the Varellans could see the first flashes of light enemy cannons opening fire. The humans didn't slow down. They didn't scatter like most fleets under heavy fire. Instead, the Iron Resolve surged forward, taking the brunt of the attack on its massive shields. The smaller Terran ships spread out, weaving between enemy blasts, returning fire with perfect precision. The first enemy cruiser exploded in a burst of white flame. Its burning wreckage tumbled toward the planet, breaking apart in the atmosphere. The humans didn't pause to celebrate. Their formation shifted like a living thing, tearing into the enemy's side. On the surface, soldiers stopped in the streets to watch the burning trails across the sky. Children pointed upward, their fear momentarily replaced by wonder. Inside the Varellan command hall, the counselor leaned forward over the holomap. The Terran ships weren't just attacking, they were pushing the enemy into a trap. The humans had predicted where the enemy would retreat and cut off their escape routes before they could react. It was like watching hunters herd prey on the enemy flagship. The alien commander slammed a clawed hand against his console. "These are not core world fleets," he hissed. "They're Deathworlders. Break formation. Do not let them surround you." But it was too late. The human ships moved faster, striking at weak points in the enemy lines. Every time one enemy vessel fell, 2 more were targeted. The battle was turning, and everyone could see it. Back on the surface, the skydock shook as something massive descended through the clouds. A Terran dropship, larger than any Varellan transport, hovered above the landing platform. Its engines roared like thunder, wind blasting through the gathered crowd. The ramp dropped open, and armored figures stepped out, human soldiers. They wore matte black combat suits, heavy plating covering their chests and limbs, each carried a weapon that looked older and more brutal than anything the Varellans had ever seen. No elegant plasma rifles here. Only tools meant to end a fight quickly. The first human to step forward removed his helmet. He had short black hair, sharp eyes, and a face marked by a thin scar. His gaze swept over the Varellan officers. "I'm Captain Ward," he said. "My men will coordinate with your ground forces. Point us to where your people are dying, and we'll make it stop." The Varellan commander swallowed hard. She could feel the weight of his words. There was no doubt he meant every one of them. Overhead, the sky was a burning tapestry of fire and metal. The humans had brought war to Varela, and for the first time since the invasion began, the Varellans dared to hope. The first clash, the enemy fleet didn't hesitate. The moment the Deathworlders' warships closed the distance, plasma fire lit the darkness of space. Streams of blue and green energy tore across the void, striking human shields with violent bursts of light. But the Terrans didn't slow. They moved like predators that had finally cornered their prey. The iron resolve took the lead, its massive frame swallowing the enemy's focus. Hits slammed into its shields, but they held strong, glowing brighter with every impact. Behind it, two heavy cruisers split off. Flanking the enemy's left side, their cannons opened fire in perfect rhythm, thunderous. Heavy blasts that ripped through enemy armor as if it were thin glass. From the surface, the people of Varela could see it all. Bright explosions bloomed against the night sky like dying stars. Every time an enemy ship burst apart, cheers erupted from the streets. For the first time in days, the Varellans saw hope. Burning above them, inside the enemy flagship, the alien commander's eyes darted over the tactical display. "They're not following standard formations," he growled. "They're improvising. Matching our moves before we make them." His second-in-command trembled. "They're Deathworlders." "Sir," she whispered, "they've been fighting like this for centuries." In the middle of the chaos, a smaller Terran frigate dove through the enemy's formation. It spun in a barrel roll to dodge incoming fire, then dropped a cluster of torpedoes into the heart of three enemy ships. The detonation was blinding, the shockwave sending debris scattering into the void. Even the Varellan defense officers gasped at the sheer boldness. "Who flies like that?" One asked in disbelief. "Someone who expects to survive," another answered. The enemy tried to regroup, pulling back toward the safety of their larger ships. But the humans didn't give them the chance. The iron resolve surged forward, its main cannon charging with a deep, resonant hum when it fired. The beam was so bright it lit up the entire hemisphere of the planet below. The enemy battleship it struck didn't explode, it simply ceased to exist. Torn apart at the molecular level, in the Varellan command hall, the counselor turned to her officers. "Do you see it now?" She said quietly, "They are not here to fight for honor. They are here to end this." On the battlefield, the Terran fleet pressed harder. Every move seemed calculated, every strike purposeful. Where other fleets hesitated, the humans committed fully. Where others might retreat to regroup, they charged straight into the heaviest fire, trusting their allies to cover them. Then came the moment no one expected. The enemy flagship launched a hidden weapon, an energy pulse meant to disable all ships within range. The blast rippled out like a shockwave. Varellan ships on the edge of the battle went dark, their lights flickering out. For a heartbeat, it seemed like the humans would suffer the same fate. But the Terran ships stayed online. Their systems had already adapted, shields bending the pulse away like water off steel. On the Iron Resolve, Admiral Reyes' voice was calm as ever. "They're desperate now. Push through," and the humans did. They didn't just hold their line, they shattered the enemy's formation completely. One by one, enemy ships turned and fled, retreating toward the far edge of the system. but the Terrans pursued. Picking off stragglers with frightening precision, they didn't waste shots, didn't fire wildly. Every round, every torpedo, every beam found its mark. From the streets of Varela, the people watched the sky in awe. The battle above looked like a storm made of fire and steel, and in the center of it, the Deathworlders moved like the eye of that storm calm, controlled and unstoppable. When the last enemy cruiser exploded in a silent burst of light, the cheers from the surface shook the air, but the humans didn't stop. They were already shifting their attention to the next threat: enemy troops on the ground. As the Terran fleet held orbit, massive dropships broke formation and began descending through the clouds. They were coming down to finish the fight. Face to face, in the Varelan command hall, the counselor whispered to herself, "This is what it means to call Deathworlders for help." Her voice trembled not with fear, but with the weight of knowing that every enemy soldier still on Varela was about to face the same fate as their fleet. And somewhere in the burning skies above, Admiral Reyes gave the simplest of orders: ground teams, hunt the ground strike. The night sky over Varela was still burning when the first Terran dropships broke through the clouds. They fell like meteors, engines roaring so loud the ground shook. Every building in the capital vibrated as the massive vessels descended, their armored hulls glowing faintly from the heat of re-entry. On the surface, the enemy troops were already spread across the streets. Armored walkers crushed vehicles underfoot, while squads of alien soldiers moved door to door, dragging civilians from hiding. They had been winning until now. A thunderous boom split the air as the first Terran dropship touched down in the middle of the war zone. Its landing struts smashed into the pavement, crushing an enemy gun emplacement beneath it. The ramp slammed down, and black-armored human soldiers stormed out, weapons raised. Their movements were sharp, almost mechanical, every step precise. They didn't yell, didn't hesitate, they simply advanced. The enemy opened fire. Bright plasma bolts streaked across the street, slamming into the humans' armor, but the Deathworlders didn't break. Formation, shields flared around them, absorbing the heat. Then came the reply short bursts from heavy kinetic rifles. The sound was deafening. Each shot tore through enemy armor like it was thin cloth, sending alien soldiers sprawling. From a nearby rooftop, a young Varelan soldier watched in disbelief. She had been pinned down for hours, her squad wiped out by the invaders. Now, in less than a minute, the humans had pushed the enemy back halfway down the street. They move like they've done this 1,000 times, she whispered to herself. Across the city, more Terran dropships landed. Some deployed tanks low, heavy vehicles that crawled forward with terrifying power. Their main cannons fired once, and entire enemy barricades vanished in clouds of dust and fire. Others released squads of specialized troops, each wearing different armor and carrying different weapons. Some had massive shields to block incoming fire, while others carried weapons so large they required 2 soldiers to operate. In one sector, a Terran fire team moved into a building where civilians were trapped. The door was barricaded from the inside, but the humans simply blew the wall open instead. A Varelan mother clutched her children as the humans entered. She flinched at their towering figures. One soldier knelt, removing his helmet. He had tired eyes and a calm voice. "You're safe now," he said, guiding them toward the dropship. The mother stared. These weren't monsters. They were protectors, but the enemy wasn't giving up easily. They regrouped in the central market, pulling together their heaviest troops. Massive alien brutes in powered armor took position, their heavy cannons trained on the advancing humans. The first volley hit hard, pinning the Terrans behind cover. The air filled with heat and the sharp smell of scorched metal. Then the iron resolve itself joined the fight. From orbit, it unleashed a precision strike. A beam of focused energy punched through the enemy formation, turning the center of the market into molten stone. The surviving enemy troops scattered. That was all the opening the Deathworlders needed. The humans surged forward, their boots pounding against the ground. They closed the distance fast, switching to close-quarters weapons, short carbines, shotguns, even blades. The fight was brutal and fast. In less than 5 minutes, the market was secure. Throughout the capital, the pattern repeated. The enemy would dig in. Confident in their numbers, the humans would hit them from 2, sometimes 3 angles at once. Precision airstrikes would soften defenses. Then ground troops would sweep in, clearing buildings room by room. Varellan's soldiers began to join the fight. At first, they stayed behind the humans, providing covering fire. But soon, they were fighting alongside them. It was strange the humans didn't shout orders. They simply moved in ways that made it obvious what needed to be done. Even without speaking the same language, the two forces fought like they had trained together for years. By sunrise, the capital was almost fully under Terran control. Enemy bodies littered the streets, their weapons abandoned. Varellan civilians emerged from hiding, staring in awe at the human soldiers who had taken their city back. Many expected the humans to celebrate their victory, but they didn't. They simply checked their gear, reloaded their weapons, and prepared for the next fight. Because outside the capital, the enemy still held strongholds, and the Deathworlders had no intention of stopping until every last one was gone. Somewhere near the city gates, Captain Ward stood on a damaged wall. He looked over the smoking ruins of the battlefield, then keyed his comm. "Admiral Reyes," he said, "surface resistance is crumbling. Give the word, and we'll finish this." High above in orbit, the Admiral's voice came back, calm as ever. "Then finish it." The enemy's terror far from Varella's capital. In the black void beyond its moons, the enemy fleet limped away from the slaughter in orbit. They had come to this world expecting an easy victory, soft resistance, scattered defenses, a quick surrender. Instead, they had met the Deathworlders. Now, their numbers were broken, their morale shattered, and fear spread faster than any wound. On the enemy flagship, the air was heavy with silence. Crew members avoided looking at one another. They had all seen it, Terran warships moving with impossible speed, cutting through entire formations as if they knew the enemy's tactics before they were even tried. The commander gripped the railing near the bridge viewport, his claws tapping in a nervous rhythm. "These humans," he said under his breath, "they do not fight like soldiers. They fight like predators." Reports from the surface only made things worse. Entire regiments had been wiped out in minutes. Heavy armor units were destroyed before they could even reach firing range. Some troops simply vanished, their positions overrun so fast that no distress call was sent, and those who escaped whispered something more terrifying than death. The humans were not just killing them. They were hunting them. In one occupied city, an enemy captain rallied his troops. He barked orders, trying to form a defensive wall in the narrow streets. Before they could even finish setting up, a small squad of Terrans appeared at the far end. They didn't charge blindly. They advanced slowly, deliberately, their rifles firing in short bursts that struck only when it counted. Every time an alien soldier peeked out, a round slammed into their cover. It wasn't random, it was psychological. The humans were making them feel trapped. Within minutes, the defensive wall collapsed, and the survivors fled, dropping their weapons as they ran, back in orbit. Admiral Reyes studied the enemy retreat patterns. "They're pulling back toward their strongholds," his tactical officer said. "Good," Reyes replied, his voice calm. "It makes it easier to take them all at once." The enemy didn't realize that was exactly what the humans wanted on Deathworlds. Predators drove prey into corners before striking the final blow. And the Terran fleet had been doing this since the moment they arrived. As news of the defeat spread, panic grew among the enemy ranks. In the lower decks of their warships, soldiers whispered about what happened when humans took prisoners. Some claimed the humans spared no one, others swore they did. But only after breaking every will to fight. In truth, the humans had done neither. They weren't there to torture or enslave. But the enemy's imagination was doing the work for them. In one forward base, an alien officer sat in a bunker, Clutching his rifle with trembling hands, he could hear the distant hum of human dropships. His sergeant leaned in, whispering, "They say the humans can see in the dark. Smell fear from a kilometer away." It was a lie. But when the first human silhouette appeared in the doorway, the officer panicked. He fired wildly, missing every shot. The Terran soldier stepped forward without flinching, a shadow in black armor. 2 seconds later, the bunker was cleared. On the streets of Varela's outlying towns, the effect was the same. Whenever the humans arrived, the enemy broke. Some threw down their weapons before a shot was fired. Others tried to hide. But the humans always seemed to know where they were. The truth was simple. The Deathworlders had fought far worse than these invaders. Compared to the monsters of their homeworlds, this enemy was just another problem to solve. In the enemy war council, frustration turned to desperation. They aren't fighting fair. One commander shouted, "They don't give us time to regroup. They don't give us ground to recover. Every hour we lose more troops." Another slammed his fist against the table. "They aren't warriors. They're executioners." But the humans didn't see it that way. To them, this wasn't cruelty. It was efficiency. Every extra minute of fighting meant more civilian lives lost. And the Terrans had no interest in wasting time. On the Iron Resolve, Captain Ward reviewed the battle feeds. "Look at their movements," he said to his squad leaders. "They're breaking before we even hit them. Fear's already doing half the work." A corporal grinned. "Then let's finish the job." And so the Deathworlders kept advancing. In space, their ships cut off escape routes, forcing the enemy into kill zones. On the ground, they pushed hard into the last occupied regions, their presence alone enough to make entire platoons surrender. For the first time in the war, the enemy commander began to consider the unthinkable. Not just retreating from Varela, but leaving the entire sector before the humans decided to chase them further. In the capital, the Varelans didn't yet know how close they were to total victory. They only knew that every day, the enemy presence grew smaller, and every day, the black-armored humans pushed further, their silent, relentless march breaking the will of an entire invading army. Soon, the enemy would face a choice: flee and live with shame, or stay and be destroyed. The final stand, the last stronghold of the enemy, stood at the edge of Varela's northern wastelands. It was a fortress carved into the side of a jagged cliff, its walls thick with layers of armor plating and shield emitters. From orbit, it looked like a scar on the planet's surface, ugly but stubborn. This was where the enemy commander had gathered the last of his forces. If they lost this place, the war was over. Inside the fortress, the alien troops were restless. They had heard the stories: entire cities falling in hours, armored battalions crushed, warships turned to ash. Some still believed they could hold. Others had already accepted they were doomed. But all of them feared the same thing. The Deathworlders were coming. On the Iron Resolve, Admiral Reyes studied the holographic map. The fortress was heavily defended. Anti-air batteries ringed the cliffs. Long-range cannons pointed skyward. Tunnels beneath the ground hid supply depots and troop barracks. It was built to repel the strongest fleets in the galaxy. Unfortunately for the enemy, it wasn't built to stop humans. Reyes tapped the display, marking 3 entry points. "We'll hit here, here, and here at the same time," he said. "Ground teams will breach from the west and south. Air units will keep their guns busy. No retreat, no pause." Captain Ward leaned over the map. "They'll expect us to wear them down first," he said. Reyes gave a small smile. "Let them expect. We're going in now." The assault began before dawn. From the black sky, Terran dropships screamed downward, their engines leaving trails of fire. At the same time, artillery strikes from orbit hammered the fortress's outer walls. Explosions lit up the cliffside, shaking the ground for kilometers. The enemy opened fire. Anti-air weapons filled the sky with streaks of plasma. One Terran dropship took a direct hit, spiraling down in flames. But even as it crashed, the soldiers inside forced the ramp open mid-descent. They jumped, landing hard on the rocky ground, already firing as they hit. There was no hesitation, no fear, just forward momentum. From the west, heavy Terran tanks rumbled across the wasteland. Their cannons thundered, blasting holes in enemy. Gun emplacements. Behind them, squads of infantry advanced in the cover of the smoke. From the south, a second wave of soldiers moved up the steep slopes, using grappling lines to climb past enemy mines and barricades. The fighting was brutal. Every meter of ground was contested. The enemy commander barked orders over comms, sending his elite guard to hold the main gate. For a while, it worked. Plasma fire poured down from the walls, forcing the humans to take cover. But then, a low, rumbling sound cut through the noise. A Terran siege walker, massive, armored, and armed with twin cannons, trudged into view. Its first volley shattered the gate's shield generator in a flash of blue light. The second volley blew the gates wide open. The humans poured in, room by room, corridor by corridor. They advanced through the fortress. Enemy soldiers fought hard, but every time they formed a defense, the humans broke it with speed and precision. Some rooms were cleared in seconds. Flashbangs, shouts, and then silence in the central courtyard. Captain Ward led his squad into a direct clash with the enemy's elite guard. The aliens were taller, stronger, and heavily armored, but the humans moved faster, dodging heavy swings and countering with quick, brutal strikes. One guard swung a massive axe at Ward. Ward stepped aside and drove his blade into the gap between armor plates. The alien dropped instantly. Overhead, the sound of engines roared as Terran gunships swept in low. They strafed the upper levels of the fortress, cutting down defenders who tried to regroup. Every pass left smoking wreckage and shattered stone. By midday, the enemy was falling back toward the command center. Admiral Reyes's voice came over the comm. "End it," he said simply. The final push was a storm of fire and steel. The humans breached the command center doors with shaped charges. Inside, the enemy commander stood with a small group of guards. He raised his weapon, but the humans didn't give him the chance to fire. A short, controlled burst from a Terran rifle dropped him where he stood. The guards surrendered moments later. It was over. The fortress that had been the enemy's last hope was silent, except for the crackle of small fires. The Deathworlders moved through the halls, checking every corner, clearing every room. Outside, Varellan soldiers and civilians gathered at the base of the cliff, watching the black-armored humans emerge from the smoke. Captain Ward stepped forward, pulling off his helmet. "It's done," he said into his comm. In orbit, Admiral Reyes allowed himself the smallest sigh of relief. "Then we moved to cleanup," he replied. No cheers, no speeches, just the cold efficiency of warriors who had finished the job. For the enemy, the war was not just lost, it was ended, and for the Varellans, the sight of the Deathworlders walking out of that fortress would be remembered for generations. The departure, the war on Varela was over. The enemy's last fortress lay in ruins. Its banners burned, its weapons silent. Across the planet, the black-armored Deathworlders moved through the smoking streets, not as conquerors, but as soldiers, making sure no danger remained in the capital. Varellan civilians were emerging from hiding for the first time in weeks. They stepped into the light with caution, as if still unsure the fighting was truly done. Children clung to their parents, staring wide-eyed at the tall, armored humans patrolling the streets. There was no shouting, no victory parade, just the quiet sound of boots on stone and the low hum of Terran equipment. Captain Ward stood in the city's central plaza, his helmet tucked under his arm. Around him, his squad worked to set up evacuation points for the wounded and distribute emergency rations from the dropships. He handed a packet of water to a small Varellan child, who hesitated before taking it. When the boy finally reached out, Ward smiled and said, "It's safe now." The child's mother stepped forward, bowing her head in gratitude, but Ward only shook his head. "No thanks needed," he said. Live, in the Varellan command hall, the counselor stood with Admiral Reyes. Through the wide windows they could see Terran ships in the sky, still in perfect formation. The counselor's voice was heavy with emotion. You came when no one else would. You fought like no army I've ever seen. We can't repay you. Reyes looked at her, his expression calm. We didn't come for payment, he said. We came because you asked for help, and we answer calls like that. On the enemy side of the battlefield, surrender was complete. Captured soldiers sat in guarded zones, heads lowered. The Terrans treated them with cold efficiency, no cruelty, no mocking, just strict control. It was unsettling for the prisoners, who had expected rage or revenge. Instead, they were ignored. Unless they posed a threat. For them, being spared by Deathworlders was almost more terrifying than being killed. The days after the battle were filled with repair and recovery. Varellan engineers worked alongside human technicians to restore power grids and clean up the debris. The humans didn't rest much. Even after victory, they ran patrols, scanned the skies, and fortified vulnerable points. It wasn't until the third day that the order finally came from Admiral Reyes. The fleet would leave. The news spread through the city quickly. Some Varellans felt relief. They had feared the humans might stay as an occupying force. But most felt something unexpected. A deep sadness for all the fear they had once held about Deathworlders. These strange warriors had saved them, and now they would be gone. In the main plaza, the Varellan Council gathered to officially thank the humans. The counselor tried to speak, but her voice caught halfway through her words. Instead, she simply said, "We will remember." Admiral Reyes nodded once, as if that was all he needed to hear. At the sky docks, Terran soldiers loaded the last of their gear onto dropships. Varellan children ran alongside them, asking questions about their weapons and armor. Some soldiers answered with small smiles. Others just patted the children's heads before boarding. One young girl clung to Captain Ward's arm and said, "Please don't go." Ward knelt down so his eyes met hers. "We have other places that need us," he said softly. "But if you ever call again, we'll come." Above the planet, the Terran fleet began to rise. The Iron Resolve led the way, its massive shadow passing over the city one last time. There was no fanfare, no final salute, just the quiet power of engines igniting as the ships angled toward the stars. From the balcony of the command hall, the counselor watched them go. Beside her, an old Varellan officer spoke. "They came like a storm," he said, "and they left like the tide. But the world is different now." The counselor nodded. "Yes, because we now know. When the Deathworlders answer a call for help, they do not stop until the danger is gone." In orbit, Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve. The planet grew smaller in the viewport. "Set course for the next signal," he ordered. His crew moved instantly. For them, this was just one war in a lifetime of them. But somewhere on Varela, families would tell stories of the day the Deathworlders came. And in those stories, the humans would not be monsters. They would be the warriors who arrived when no one else. Would the fleet jump to hyperspace? In the sudden silence of space, only the faint memory of their engines remained. But in the hearts of the Varellans, the sound would echo for generations.